Hi, and welcome to the Angry Economist channel. And this is our lecture one. I think this is one of the main reasons why I created this channel, because I want to talk about the fundamental problem of wealth distribution, or what I call the continuation of slavery. To analyze this problem, we're going to create a very simplistic economic model, and we're going to make some assumptions, and then we're going to run our analysis. So the first assumption we're going to make, suppose there is a person who has $1 million in capital, and that $1 million must be used in production, only in production. Now, suppose that this person cannot hire workers, so this person has to do all the work by himself. Third, suppose that this person cannot lend this capital, so he cannot earn interest on this capital, or he cannot do any speculative activities such as gambling or the stock market. Four, suppose that this person is given the goal of doubling his capital in 10 years. So here is my question. Do you think this person can achieve this goal under these conditions? Here is my answer. The answer is no. Only if additional workers are used is the goal achievable. Otherwise, this person could achieve this goal in a longer time, in a much longer time than 10 years. Now, the second question is then, how many self-employed millionaires of this type do you know? Personally, I never met anybody working by himself that has become a millionaire. So, this analysis leads to the conclusion that only hired workers can generate extra wealth for a business owner that he could otherwise generate alone. So this extra wealth is called profits. And we're going to focus very seriously on this concept of profits. So profits is something that has been advocated as being an inherent part of capitalism, which is the economic system we live in today. So let's look at what capitalism is about. Well, capitalism is described as an economic system in which the means of production are privately owned and operated for a private profit. Decisions regarding supply, demand, price, distribution, and investment are made by private actors in the market. Profit distributed to owners who invest in businesses, and wages are paid to workers employed by businesses. So this is more or less the standard definition of what capitalism is. The only thing I have to observe here is that this definition is not completely true. There are parts that are true, there are parts that, in my opinion, are fiction. So we're going to go over it. First, because we're talking about capitalism, let's look at what capital is. In a very basic concept, capital is any resources that can be used in any economic activity and that can be improved by investing in it, resulting in a new resource or in an improved resource, able of generating higher and higher returns. So this is crucial. You can take any resource and you invest in it and you make it more productive. That resource can be considered capital. So many resources that we know can be considered capital. Okay, let's look at the classical definition of the production function. Back in the 1700s, the production function of any business or a country was defined as the output being a function of labor, land, and capital. If we go back to the definition of capital, we can see that at that time they didn't consider that labor can be improved by training it, for example, or land using more fertilizer. But later on, a more advanced definition of the production function was established when analysts realized that land can be improved by uh, putting more inputs into it, like fertilizers and all the pesticides. So land start being considered to be part of capital. Okay. Later on, we came up with the modern definition of the production function, in which labor became also capital, because people realize that if we train the workers better, if people get more education, more training, they become more productive. So in that way, that's a way of improving a resource, which is labor, the skills of the workers. So that's how it became capital too. So the modern definition of capital, I mean, the production function, is that output is a function of capital, period. So that's the reason why the system in which we live in is called capitalism. Now, let's look at the second point in the definition of capitalism. It is an economic system because it refers to the relationship between the production and distribution of output. The next point is that it uses means of production. Here I want to clarify that means of production are in general thought of being the instrument, the means, the machinery used to transform raw materials. But since raw material become also machinery or tools or instrument used in transforming other raw material, everything under capitalism is considered to be means of production. Everything that can be used in production. The private ownership of the means of production. Well, if we look at that, this is not inherent to capitalism. Private property has been around before capitalism. So this is not just a factor within capitalism. That was prior to capitalism. So we know that. The only system that doesn't have private property is the communist system. And we know that that means it belongs to the state. The state is the owner of all the means of production. Now, private profit. Well, this is the modern face of slavery. I think that profit has been around always. Since the first moment that people had hidden information. For example, you buy a product at a price and then you sell at a higher price, but the buyer doesn't know that you are selling it at a higher price. You're already making profits. So that's been around before capitalism. Okay, but before it was masked because we had a slave and we had profits. Okay, so now that slavery is over, we abolished that over a century ago, and now that means that the only way to still rip people off their wealth is by the use of profits. So in the modern ideology of capitalism, profits are defended, eagerly defended, okay, passionately defended. Okay, and the reason why it exists is because they are legal. Well, but slavery was legal too. And there is something called asymmetrical information, which I told you. The seller might know, the seller knows the difference between the purchase price of the item he's selling and the selling price he's asking, but the consumer doesn't know. So, and that is legal. So you can be ripped off just by being sold an item at 2 or 3 times its cost of acquisition or production. Okay. Decisions regarding supply, demand, price, distribution, and investment are made by private actors in the market. Well, yeah, this is true, but not completely true. So, because since various decades ago, several decades ago, the government intervention has been advocated as a promoter of economic growth. mostly in time of recession. Okay, so this is not completely true. Okay. Now, markets. Well, markets have been around forever. Since the first exchange that took place on Earth, we can say that established a market. So, the definition of capitalism implies to a large extent that markets are integral part of this system only, but that's not true. Okay, we know that markets have been around. Even communist countries that they say they are not market economy, they do have markets. Okay, so this is something that is not completely true. Okay, the bottom line is this: we have to distinguish between what the um, economic part of the system is and what the rules of the games are, because the economy doesn't drive necessarily the rules of the game. So the only natural economic rule that exists in general is that one of the exchange. Anything else has to be framed into what we call the rules of the game. For example, in this case, asymmetrical information plays a huge role in the creation of profits, which I call this is the factor that helps ripping off the party with the lack of information. Should that be allowed? It's a moral issue. Okay, we could practically compel producers to disclose their cost of production. That will be perfect information that we talk in economics, and to sell at cost of production. And even if we don't compel producers to sell at the cost of production, if the consumer knew what the cost of production were, he will never agree to buy product at a higher price than the cost of production. Okay, so let's bring up the points that we have to pay attention to when we talk about capitalism. First, the very definition of capitalism. We know that now that is not completely accurate. Okay, certain things have been taken from other places and put it as if this defines what capitalism is, which I don't think so. It's an economic system, of course it is an economic system, but it's just the economic system. There is the other side of the rules of the game. Now, the means of production, yes, means of production are always used to transform raw material into output in any economic system. So yes, we use those means of production. Private property, well, private property has been around way before capitalism. So this is not a principle that only applies to capitalism. So no. Now, private profit. Private profit has been around forever too. Why? Because from the moment that there is asymmetrical information, you can have private profits. So this is not an inherent part of capitalism. Decisions regarding production, supply, demand, and all of that, yes, to some degree, but it's not completely true. Government intervention is advocated many times, and it has been done. So it's not completely true that they say that all of these decisions are left to the free market. I don't think so. And then the very existence of markets. Markets have been around way before the capitalist system came to be. So no, this is not something that was created with capitalism. So the only two points here that really apply to capitalism is that it is an economic system, and of course it uses the means of production to transform raw material into goods and services. But anything else is just about the rules of the game. Okay, so this is it for now, and I hope you come around next time for my next lecture.